Welcome to the Let's Talk Data podcast series presented by SAP.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 4 of Let's Talk Data. My name is Ginger, and our title today is about modernizing analytics with machine learning for supply chain efficiency. And today I'm super excited because we have two key partners for us that are really leading the way with machine learning and supply chain efficiency. We have Inspired Intellect and Red Hat here today. And Alex, why don't you kick us off by telling us a little bit about Inspired Intellect and then introducing everyone who's going to be talking today.
Appreciate that, Ginger. Inspired Intellect is a end-to-end data management and analytics consultancy where we focus on business outcomes for our clients through the mastery of analytics and transforming their data insights into meaningful business outcomes. As such, we work across the paradigms of broad technology spectrums, on-prem as well as cloud solutions. As such, we partner with leading-edge technology providers, including Red Hat. With me today is Brian Montero, who is our Chief Data Scientist, and I'm excited to have Ted Jones from Red Hat today. Ted, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ted Jones. I'm SAP Architect at Red Hat. Red Hat provides a support for AI both at the edge and at the data center with our leading Kubernetes platform as a service, OpenShift. We also provide storage via OpenShift container storage, enabling block, file, and object storage, which can be exposed either internally or externally on Kubernetes clusters. And this allows us to create, while also working with applications and machine learning platforms like SAP Data Intelligence, running across hybrid scenarios on OpenShift, for example. Alex, we were chatting earlier, and you mentioned workload modernization as one of the key elements of modernizing analytics. Can you describe more about what you mean by workload modernization?
Sure. So a lot of the work that we've been doing over the years has been implementing new technology. And we are very reverent at Inspired Intellect about the term legacy, because we helped implement a lot of that legacy. But what we've noticed is as technology gets implemented, a lot of business use cases get pushed onto technology that may or may not be best fitted for it. And as technology evolves, some workloads get pushed onto these technologies that may not be really optimized for that technology. So workload modernization really focuses on applying the best class technology in its best evolution towards a business outcome through a workload implementation. It's a way to walk before you run, a way to kind of eat the elephant one bite at a time by taking specific workloads, focusing on the technology that's best suited for that workload, and doing the digital transformation journey in the context of a business perspective as opposed to a technology perspective. So as we modernize these workloads, we are modernizing business outcomes, and we are positioning the platforms and the frameworks that the technologies can then continue to build on. I hope that kind of clarifies the workload modernization approach. To continue, as an example, workload modernization, as a quick example, takes into account things like the new innovations of cloud technology, being able to move from traditional capital to an operational expense, and then an OpEx model where you are paying for only what you use and you are able to scale dynamically for when you need the scale. And that is one of the core paradigms of cloud platforms and the technologies that are developed on cloud, especially cloud-native solutions that are truly able to take advantage of that technical paradigm. But just moving a technology from one platform to another doesn't necessarily solve a business problem, moving a business problem and the workloads associated to that business problem to take advantage of some of these innovations allows our customers to really move forward in their business operations, either optimizing that business operation or perhaps evolving it and maturing it to a level that couldn't be executed on before. So that kind of defines what we believe workload modernization and the approach associated to that is. And Brian, maybe if you could add some of the examples of workload modernization in the context of supply chain and how we have seen our clients adopt that and being challenged by the industry challenges of supply chain.
Excellent points that you've made there, Alex. And I would like to take this opportunity to showcase how advanced analytics has played a role in the workload modernization, right? Advanced analytics is sort of being looked at as the engine that will drive business growth by leveraging this data. At the same time, when we look across some of our clients, and many of our clients for that matter, we're finding that they're not yet sure how to assess their analytics maturity and where they should begin their journey, and even more importantly, where does that journey lead them to, right? We still see many enterprises running their business on what we call descriptive analytics, or it's often referred to as hindsight analytics or reactive analytics, which essentially focuses on what has happened. It's a bit like running your business by driving your car and looking through the rearview mirror, right? Certainly not ideal, but many enterprises that we work with are literally at that point. So when we talk about transforming to a proactive based decisioning, we have to start with recognizing the reasons why certain events in a business or an enterprise happen, and from there, even mature up to when are they likely to happen next. And this is the realm of predictive analytics that many enterprises are focused on sort of building out, right? Outside of predictive analytics, and sort of moving up from there, you enter the space of prescriptive analytics, where the algorithms are sort of helping and recommending decisions and actions to business users, and prescribing to them how they should respond to certain predictive events. And what we've sort of explained here is that ladder of descriptive to predictive and moving on to prescriptive might be phrased in a sequential manner, but an enterprise may have certain business processes at different levels of maturity on that ladder. And in fact, it is sometimes even acceptable for a business process to entirely skip over a step in that maturity ladder and, for example, leap from descriptive directly into prescriptive analytics. And so to make that point, let me walk you through a few examples in the supply chain industry sector. Let me begin with one that we are intimately familiar with. Globalization has led to many industries relying on suppliers across the globe. And in the recent months, we've seen those supply chains tremendously impacted by the ability to move product from point A to point B. And so several enterprises are now focused on what's called mitigating supplier risk. They're faced with unknowns, they're faced with market uncertainty, but at the same time, they're not quite certain what actions and what decisions are they going to take in the context of supplier risk. For example, are they looking at sort of reducing um, the list of suppliers that they work with, or maybe reallocating their global supply chain in a way that accounts for both nearshore as well as offshore opportunities, right? And so as organizations work through this, they're looking at what types of data are available. They're still trying to understand the complexity of the problem they're dealing with. And so it's not uncommon to find enterprises that are looking at mitigating supplier risk, rightfully at the descriptive analytics end of the spectrum in the maturity ladder. They're literally feeling their way through this maze. On the other hand, if you take a business use case like fulfilling orders, we've seen the growth of e-commerce as well as digital tracking in the context of logistics and the supply chain make wealth of data available. We are well suited to start utilizing those data assets to build out predictive models that might predict the likelihood of an order reaching late. We've seen firms like Amazon make very good use of this type of data, as well as other large enterprises in the 3PL logistics space like UPS, as well as your neighborhood, pizza delivery vendor is now using tracking, delivery tracking to enable them to identify which orders need to be processed first ahead of others because of the delivery risk. And then finally, on the far side, where you would expect enterprises to be very mature, as in the example of demand forecasting, where there's been a wealth of research, you would anticipate that the domain of demand forecasting is very well placed to take the leap into prescriptive analytics. But as we've seen in the recent few months, those demand forecasts have not quite materialized into appropriate inventory management strategies or replenishment strategies, because they're really looking at data from a historical stable environment. They've not quite accounted for the market shocks that we are experiencing at the moment, as infections and the rise of mortality spreads across the globe, and hotspots, infection hotspots wax and wane. Those have an impact on product demand, and through sort of the cross-product interactions, you'd expect that they may have sort of trickle-down effects on other products as well, availability of other products as well. So these are very critical pieces that one needs to work through, and we'd love to be able to share more with you, and perhaps Alex, you could lead us into a little discussion around use case rationalization and how we can explore use cases with our clients.
Yeah, I think, Brian, you mentioned several points that I want to maybe touch back on. One of them is the idea of the rationalization that talks about what exactly are the key attributes identifying workload position for modernization, right? At a matrix kind of level, there is that value versus viability perspective. It's the idea of, I don't necessarily want to change something because I'm able to change it, or drive change towards something that I may not have a clear value proposition for. On the other hand, there are some very valuable activities that I may want to drive that I am not very well positioned to change. For example, if I have a very deep desire for embedding analytics into a portion of my supply chain process, but I do not have the data, or I do not have the platforms that allow me to scale up to the performance needs that I need for that data to be processed at, I may find myself challenged by the fact that I have a very good use case that I cannot execute on. And that is one of the things that we want to help our clients work through. And these are complicated topics and issues, and we definitely don't recommend doing it alone. Bring in a partner, bring in an expert, and we can help with that. But to touch on some of the other things that you mentioned about COVID, for example, one of the things that we believe, and I'm interested to see if maybe you and Ted both have a perspective on this, that says what it really did is exposed the gaps and the latency that we have taken to mature in certain areas. For example, in the case of machine learning, what COVID has really exposed to us is our overdependence, perhaps, on historical data for analytical modeling, where when that historical pattern is significantly disrupted, like in the case of the pandemic, what are the alternate approaches? And as these disruptions are so significant, what kind of platforms and technologies and architectures should we have already adopted in order to quickly pivot and adjust to them, above and beyond the fact that there is clear value in executing a specific use case or a specific process change?
That's a great point, Alex. I completely agree. I mean, as you move into the realm of predictive and prescriptive analytics, you will increasingly encounter what I call the need to compare and contrast different models. Right. I mean, the recent months we've seen that the models that have been built on historical data, which has been relatively stable, can very quickly run into rough ground in the face of disruptive market events. And so that ability to be able to respond in an agile manner, in a very nimble fashion, and be able to compare and contrast and explore the influence of market events on your decisions, on your predictions, cannot be more emphasized, right? And what that means is that you need this maturity, a certain level of maturity that recognizes that advanced analytics really ought to be treated very much like you would treat a software engineering effort. It needs to have that same level of rigor, of robust, agile processes, employ CI/CD mechanisms for advanced analytics. Recognize the role of reusable microservices. I mean, I couldn't emphasize this more. The reusability of microservices that, for example, take the case of demand forecasting, where you're trying to predict demand for certain products. Well, you know events in the past, like hurricanes or floods or other natural disasters, wildfires, caused a spike in certain products or the need for certain products. Why couldn't we use that type of data? It's an anomalous event that is unlikely to happen on a repeated basis, but that's valuable data nevertheless. Where infection hotspots are waxing and waning. So we understand which products, when are products likely to be impacted, and what products are likely to be impacted on the store shelf.
I think that's a great point, because the idea that the pandemic is such a unique event is certainly true in its scale, but not in its overall event. We have, like you mentioned, floods, hurricanes, natural disasters, fires, human disasters, including things that are almost like planned, like, you have some kind of a parade, a concert, some kind of an event that's not common, and it could disrupt and create everything from traffic to demand. One other thing that you mentioned that I want to maybe just touch base on, and then maybe give Ted a chance to talk about it from Red Hat perspective, is the idea of operational efficiencies. So you mentioned continuous integration, continuous delivery, CI/CD. It's also the evolution of what we traditionally have seen applied to DevOps in the way that we develop applications and new solutions being applied to data and analytics. So terms like data ops really allow us to kind of accelerate and automate the constructs of data pipelining, orchestrations, selections of infrastructure components on the fly, so that you're doing it in a repeatable and consistent manner. And that's one of the things that you mentioned, Brian, that really caught my attention on the repeatability. And it allows you to really create that the automation that releases your very valuable resources that might have been used to create the solution, releasing them towards higher value operations as opposed to sustain, the solutions that they created and being trapped into them. And then the same thing about MLOps, right? The rigors and the processes that are maybe unique to machine learning and AI implementations, but follow the similar paradigm of development standard, and the tool sets and the platforms that really drive and support machine learning operations really are the game changer and allow you, as we mentioned, to leapfrog some of those analytical maturity cycles where you can go from descriptive straight into predictive, and more importantly, into embedded integration, where not only do you know and you have guidance as to what you need to do, but you also have the opportunity to execute on that knowledge and integrate that into your business process. Ted, maybe you can talk a little bit about MLOps and the way that Red Hat thinks about it and some of the advances that maybe you guys are working on.
Yes, of course. So machine learning is iterative, right? Events like COVID rather dramatically can cause models in production to degrade over time, and that really, with the impact of COVID, really accelerated that degradation with a lot of production models. So Red Hat supports MLOps using something called GitOps at the core. So when models are trained in machine learning platforms like SAP Data Intelligence and pushed to a Git image repository, this kicks off a CI/CD pipeline using a project called Tekton, which is our cloud-native CI/CD project. And those images get validated and add those models to a production repository called Quay, which allows you to create a disconnected intelligent edge. So you can do all that processing at the edge in cases where you don't have access to the backend data centers. We also offer something called Advanced Cluster Management, or ACM, and that allows you to keep all of those edge devices and your data centers in sync by deploying and distributing these applications at scale. Also, ACM offers auditing and compliance capabilities. So we have a full end-to-end solution for the scenario you're talking about, and we enable data scientists and companies that practice data science to react to changes very, very quickly in an agile fashion, as well as react to in a situation where you may not have access to internet. So it's become the MLOps story for us has become front and center. We're actually looking at creating a managed MLOps platform that could work with ML frameworks from SAP to enable that intelligent enterprise.
Great. And I think one thing that you mentioned is that idea of, the hybrid architecture, right? The one thing that we talk about in terms of workload modernization is that it's focused on the workload, right? You may have a flow where workloads have interdependencies and correlations, and they operate across different architectures. Whether you have a component of it on-prem part of it in the cloud, part of it in a distributed data center. These are constructs that should be there in support of the business process and the business workload. It shouldn't be a limiting factor. And one of the things that we really work hard to is the idea that you could truly find a best fit technology and architecture component that really supports your business operations. We absolutely want to make sure that we enable those automation capabilities and democratize the complexities of operations through some of these repeatable, reusable, and automatable components. But the most important part is that business flow. So in the context of supply chain, you really want to be able to run your supply chain business, adjust to the challenges and the dynamics, and be able to do it in a cost-efficient and performance-efficient manner. So whether you're implementing concepts that are more unique to ML, such as like data provenance or model drift support, or whether you're doing more data ops optimizations such as pipeline management and cloud resource orchestrations, whether you are deploying new architectural paradigms such as containerization in the cloud for repeatable component-based and secure deployment of your business processes, or you're doing some traditional operations that are being lifted and shifted to the new platforms to take advantage of a new financial model, or perhaps just new resources that are not available to you in your legacy paradigm. These are all components of the workload modernization, and it could be applied to most of the cases. And the repeatable reuse of the IT technology to support this really is the partnership that we're trying to drive between the traditional IT and business relationships. With that, one of the things I wanted to just kind of end with is the idea that Inspired Intellect is ready and willing to engage with our clients to support them through these journeys, through these rationalizations and discussions, whether it's to engage at a partner level and take over a portion of a project and deliver that project, or to perhaps staff resources to help augment the teams that you already have in place. We have the ability to engage with you, and through the relationships and partnerships that we bring to the table, such as the Red Hat relationship and SAP, we are able to really leverage the best-in-class technologies and expertise in that spectrum. So, Inspired Intellect can be reached at inspiredintellect-us.com, or check out our LinkedIn page for Inspired Intellect and start a conversation. We're ready and willing to take this conversation forward. Brian, Ted, any other topics or questions that you want to maybe round off on?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to have this great discussion. That I learned a lot from the Inspired Intellect side. We really appreciate the partnership that we have with you and SAP, and the capabilities that you have within the AI space. If anyone has questions for Red Hat, you can contact us at sap@redhat.com, or go to our website, redhat.com/SAP, to find out more information.
Great. Thank you so much. Ginger, back to you.
Well, I want to say thank you to all of you guys for joining, Ted from Red Hat and Alex and Brian from Inspired Intellect. My understanding is you guys also have a solution for order fulfillment on our App Center. Isn't that correct, Alex and Brian?
Absolutely, yes. We did build that out earlier this year, and it's on App Center, and it actually integrates both the SAP Data Warehouse Cloud and the Data Intelligence platform, brings those two products together into a single solution.
So in addition, you can go to Inspired Intellect us.com. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can reach out to Ted at Red Hat, and you can also go to the App Center and do a search on Inspired Intellect. It's really great to have such brain power here that understands both the impact of COVID and the importance of machine learning and all the decision going on, and the supply, particularly in the supply chain area, which has had such a hit. So I just want to thank all of you all for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you back next season on another episode of our Let's Talk Data. So thank you guys very much. Have a good day.